Today, on The Haunted Beard, I rank my top 100 horror movies of all time. This is a video I've been wanting to do since I started my channel. It's going to be an absolute beast, but I have been looking forward to making this, and it just finally felt like the right time. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Here is The Haunted Beard's top 100 horror movies. So kicking things off at number 100 is going to be My Bloody Valentine 3D. Yeah, this is the remake from 2009. And I'll just say from the get-go, this is, you could probably put in the sort of guilty pleasure type category. This is a movie that definitely has some so bad it's good elements, but I just thoroughly enjoy it. It's so entertaining. It's a lot of fun. The 3D element gives it just this kind of cheesy look to it. But that's just kind of part of what adds to its appeal. It's got just some gnarly kills and just a fun story. It actually has a pretty decent little mystery to it as well. It's got a pretty good performance from Jensen Ackles. It's definitely not going to win any dialogue or writing awards, but like I said, it's just a lot of fun, and I absolutely dig it. Coming in at number 99 is going to be The Hunt. And this is, I'll just say, kind of a light version of a movie that's going to show up quite a bit later on the list. I'll let you think about what that might be, see if you can figure it out. But listen, The Hunt is quite a bit of fun as well. It is led by what I think is a really solid performance by Betty Gilpin. I think she crushes this movie. She's just a lot of fun to watch. And I just really like the humor and the satire element here. I like my comedy to be an equal opportunity offender, and that's exactly what The Hunt does. It goes after everybody, no matter what side of the aisle you stand on any sort of topic, you're going to get a joke fired at you, and that's what I appreciate about it. So the satire and comedy work really well here. Betty Gilpin's performance is really solid, and that's just what makes this movie so much fun. Coming in at number 98 is Upgrade, directed by Leigh Whannell, starring Logan Marshall Green. And this one's also just a blast. I love the sort of sci-fi horror element that this one goes for. And you got a little bit of kind of artificial intelligence element to it. You got a touch of sort of Terminator element in there as well. The fight scenes, I think, are really inventive and really well shot and choreographed. And the story is just a pretty intense and gnarly, action-packed sci-fi horror revenge story, which I think is awesome. And I also really like the downbeat ending. I thought that was the perfect way to end this movie. And yeah, Upgrade, man. It's pretty good stuff. Coming in at 93 is Unsane. This is the Steven Soderbergh film, and this stars Claire Foy, who also gives a really solid performance here. This movie was actually shot on an iPhone, so it has this just, look to it that I think complements the film really well, as Claire Foy's character is involuntarily submitted to a mental institution, and she is confronted with her worst fear. And the main selling point here is the psychological horror mystery element, as you don't really know if you can believe what the film is presenting to you. There's an element of sort of the unreliable narrator, and so you're just trying to kind of piece things together and figure out what's real and what's true. And so just that whole psychological, mysterious element, I think, works really well. It definitely gives you that experience where it keeps you guessing. It's filled with twists and turns. Again, really solid performance from Claire Foy, and Soderbergh directs the heck out of this thing. Coming in at number 92 is going to be Revenge. This is the French language film from 2017 starring Mathilde Lutz. And I will say this is really the only film in the sort of rape revenge subgenre that I really get down with, as this is just a gnarly and intense movie, as I really think they do a good job with Lutz's character. And I like the whole aspect of the phoenix rising from the ashes that they give it. And so carried by her performance and her character, you just cannot wait until she exacts her revenge against these men. And when she does, holy smokes, things get crazy and bloody. And the climax of this movie is over the top, but it is so satisfying. And yeah, if you haven't seen Revenge, go check it out. It's a wild ride. Coming in at number 91 is going to be Hellraiser. And this is the original one from 1987. Although I will say, if I was doing kind of a 2-for-1 deal, I would also pair the recent remake with this as well, as I was quite a fan of that movie. But officially on this list, I'm sticking with the original. And look, it's a classic. What can I say about it that hasn't been said? It introduces one of the most famous horror movie villains of all time in Pinhead. And this thing is it's just this very dark, twisted story. And that's just kind of part of why I like it. The practical effects here are pretty gnarly, pretty top-notch. So when you combine the horrific concoction of the practical effects, the dark atmosphere, and just the twisted story, it is a winning recipe. That's a whole lot of fun. Coming in at number 90 is Happy Death Day. And I've said a handful of times on my channel, the horror comedy is typically my least favorite subgenre of horror. It is a 50-50 coin toss. And this is one of the best ones. I thoroughly enjoy this. This is just a lot of fun. And I am a huge fan of Groundhog Day, one of my all-time favorite comedies. And so when you kind of add that element into a slasher horror movie, kind of whodunit as well, it's just an absolute blast. So I think the comedy here lands really well. Jessica Roth's performance, she crushes it. She's fantastic and just a whole lot of fun to watch. She does just an excellent job. And then when you add the slasher and mystery element into it all, it's just a blast. I thoroughly enjoy Happy Death Day. Coming in at number 85 is Repulsion. This is a film that came out in 1965, was directed by Roman Polanski, and stars Catherine Deneuve. And this movie is a total trip. This is an intense psychological horror thriller movie. And Deneuve's performance is really good as well. And this movie just gets into some trippy and bizarre territory, very sort of surreal, abstract, and a lot of this is presented through her eyes. And again, there's this kind of element of an unreliable narrator, as she has visions of just some crazy things. And it kind of makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable throughout parts of the movie, but just the sort of abstract, surreal element to it, I think, is extremely effective. And don't let the, almost 60-year-old time tag on this hinder you. You got to watch Repulsion. It's really, really good. Coming in at number 84, we've got VHS 2. And the main reason this found footage movie is on the list is for the segment Safe Haven. 6 movies deep, and it still remains my favorite segment out of that entire franchise. And there are some other good ones in this film as well, but Safe Haven, man, is the cream of the crop, absolutely phenomenal. And this is must watch for any horror movie fan as far as I'm concerned. Even if you're not that big of a fan of found footage or horror anthologies, you owe it to yourself to at least give Safe Haven a try because it is absolutely fantastic. Just white knuckle craziness, intensity cranked to 11 throughout the vast majority of it. It is just phenomenal. It has to be seen to be believed. I absolutely love it. And yeah, the rest of the film is not quite as good as Safe Haven, but there's still some other good segments in there. So yeah, VHS 2, number 84. Coming in at number 83 is Climax from French director Gaspar Noé. And I can honestly say this may be one of the most just straight up insane movies I have ever seen. The setup here is pretty simple. You got a handful of people at this dance school, and they are practicing for this performance. Somebody spikes the punch, they all get drugged, and oh my goodness, this thing descends into the deepest depths of madness. This is like a descent into hell in some way. It's crazy. Just the combination of the camera work and the sound design and just the lighting, just everything is working together in this just pure, insane, chaotic way. And it's quite an experience. It's not a film that has the most sort of rewatchability factor, but man, if you're a horror fan, you gotta watch this. It is such an insane experience. It cannot be missed. And I thoroughly enjoyed Climax. It's a wild one. Go check it out. It's my number 83. Coming in at number 82, Attend the Tale of Sweeney Todd. Yes, Sweeney Todd, Demon Barber of Fleet Street. I promise that's all the singing you're gonna get out of me. No more. Look, Johnny Depp in here is great. The production design and the look of this is great. Tim Burton directs the heck out of it. It's got some legitimately great music in it that I still listen to this day. And yeah, it's just a whole lot of fun. It's dark and disturbing and bloody. Oh my, is it bloody. Alan Rickman also really solid in this. And yeah, this is the only horror musical on my entire list, and really like the only horror musical that I think I've really ever watched. And but it's awesome. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. Next up at 78, we've got Child's Play. The original, of course. It's still the best one of the entire franchise, in my opinion. And I've reviewed this entire series already on my channel, so check out those reviews. And yeah, I mean, what can I say? This is another certified classic with one of the best horror movie villains of all time. Brad Dourif crushes it. And I love the practical doll effects. A lot of fun kills. The whole climactic sequence inside Andy's house when Chucky is just, you know, the robot zombie that will not die is just an absolute blast, man. Child's Play, it's good stuff. Coming in at number 77 is X. And look, I'm with everybody. I don't think there was a horror movie fan that didn't like this movie. Yeah, it's great. I love Ty West's take on Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the most part, but with obviously his own little spin and twist on it. But yeah, X is a blast. Mia Goth is fantastic, and the kills are great, and it's just a whole lot of fun. I think Ty West directs the heck out of it. Just the whole production design and everything like that. I love the setting and the location and everything too. It's just a great time, a great slasher with great kills. What more could you want? Coming in at number 76 from Jordan Peele. This might not be what you're expecting because it is Us. Yes, Us is my favorite Jordan Peele movie. I mean, what can I say? Jordan Peele's operating at a different level. I love just his creativity and ambition he brings to his movies. And Us, to me, is the best. I know I'm going to be in the small minority on that, but hey, it's just my list. What are you going to do? I think Lupita Nyong'o in it is just really solid, and I like how Peele kind of weaves in the creative ideas, the metaphors. I like that there's a bit of a puzzle element to it as you're trying to figure out what the symbolism is, and just you're kind of piecing things together, and you got to pay attention, and there's always a reward for rewatching, his movies. You can kind of pick up on more stuff the more you watch them, and so huge fan of Us. I think it's just fantastic. Coming in at number 75 is You're Next. And I've talked about this movie a few different times on my channel. And all I can say is Sharni Vinson, one of the very, very best final girls of all time. Her performance in this movie is worth the price of admission alone. I like the sort of combination of the home invasion mixed with slasher, and I do think it has some nice kind of twists and turns in it as well. The kills are absolutely brutal. Sharni Vinson, man, is just, oh, she is a joy and a pleasure to watch as she lays absolute waste to these intruders. This movie is a riot and just a complete and total blast. I will never get tired of watching it. Coming in at 74, and this is a film I just actually watched for the first time just a handful of weeks ago, and that is David Cronenberg's Videodrome. This is a movie that had been on my to-watch list for a long time, and I finally got around to watching it, and man, I'm really glad I did. This is a movie that is just, it's another just kind of dark and weird and twisted one. This has some awesome top-notch practical effects, and I've been thinking about making like a top 10 sort of practical effects in horrors video. This one would definitely be in there. And just the weird, bizarre, twisted body horror of David Cronenberg works so well here. And it's got, again, just this dark, twisted story to it. I love this sort of, cursed media type element to it. That's sort of one of my favorite, I guess you could call it, tropes within horror movies. Any sort of like, any sort of lost media, cursed media type stuff, I always just find really interesting. And there's kind of an element of that into this as well. And I also think it's like really poignant and holds up really well and has a message that is still extremely relevant for today, 30 to 40 something years later. And so, yeah, Videodrome, man, it's pretty great stuff. Coming in at number 73 is going to be Scream 4. This is actually my second favorite film in the Scream franchise. And I love the brutality of it. I think this one still has the most brutal kills and some of the best kills in the franchise. I love Hayden Panettiere's character in this, Kirby. I think she's awesome. And this film will always hold a special spot in my heart because it was filmed in my old hometown. And I actually got to watch it in the old local theater of my hometown that you actually see in the movie. And so it was just a really cool theater going experience. And I think the movie is pretty great as well. And yeah, Scream 4, man, love it. Coming in at number 72, and this is actually another film that I just recently watched within the last month or two, and that is Pulse. This is the Japanese film from 2001, directed by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. And all I can say is this is like one of the most unsettling and creepy movies I've ever watched, as, man, it has really stuck with me. There are a handful of moments in this movie that genuinely freaked me out and unsettled me. And this is another film that I think also has a bit of a poignant and relevant message for today. This is a supernatural horror with kind of a mysterious element attached to it, as these characters believe that these ghosts are contacting them through a computer screen. And it really kind of has to do with people in their lives, like living online and like loneliness and isolation and all that stuff. And yeah, it's a really effective supernatural ghost story horror film. And yeah, I was very impressed with it. It is pretty great. Coming in at number 68 from South Korea is I Saw the Devil. This is one of the best serial killer horror movies of all time. Also, one of the most just brutal and disturbing movies I've ever seen. If you haven't seen it, do yourself a favor if you can stomach it, because my goodness, you will never forget it. Byung-hun Lee plays the cop, Min-sik Choi in a insanely good performance, like almost too good, kind of creepy good performance. He plays the serial killer, and it turns into this revenge / cat and mouse type story. And my goodness, it is just, like I said, it is brutal, it is intense. And yeah, do yourself a favor though, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It is crazy. Coming in at number 67 is The Orphanage. This is the Spanish language film directed by J.A. Bayona. This is just a extremely well-told ghost story. It's also a mystery as well, and just very effective atmosphere, very creepy and unsettling. Just such a well-told story, though, and it has that mysterious element to it, which I absolutely love, and has just a pretty great and also devastating, shocking, sad twist ending as well. And yeah, it's just overall just a really effective film. Number 66 is, I think it's safe to call it a classic at this point, and that is The Sixth Sense. Of course, M. Night Shyamalan, Bruce Willis, Haley Joel Osment, and what can I say other than I see dead people, right? This is a film that I saw not too long after it came out. I remember being a younger kid, and I wasn't like a super hardcore horror fan yet at that time in my life. I remember watching that and being genuinely creeped out. And yeah, just very unsettling. The ghost scared the crap out of me. And yeah, it just was very effective. I think the film still holds up really well. Even if you know the big twist, just the way the story is told it's just really impactful and really effective. And of course, the performances are top notch, and the writing is just really good as well. And yeah, The Sixth Sense, man, it's my number 66. Next up at number 65 is VHS 94. This is still my favorite film in the entire franchise. And while it technically doesn't have my favorite individual segment, I think overall it is the best effort with the best, again, overall experience. I think all four of the segments are really good, but The Empty Wake and Storm Drain are the two that stand out for me. Those two segments are in like my top 5 out of the entire franchise as well. Absolutely love them. I think the whole legend and story built around the Rat Man and just, man, that short is so effective. There's something so creepy about them just, you know, crawling and walking back into that storm drain. I just think it's fantastic. I love the design of Ratma. And then I think Empty Wake is just, it's so simply told. It's just this very simple setup with this girl at a wake, but it's extremely effective. And I think it just works really, really well. It's creepy, it's eerie. The other two segments are, the subject is great too. Just the whole kind of first person shooter, action, horror type element to it as well. It's just all around, I think it's really top notch. It's my favorite of the franchise. Number 64 is Under the Skin. And this is a wild one, man. The main selling point for this is in its presentation, as the setup here is nothing that we haven't really seen before. And essentially, you know, you've got Scarlett Johansson, who you're pretty much able to gather is more or less an alien. She's this creature that is not from Earth, and she's just living on Earth and trying to kind of just get acclimated to things and sort of learn about the human experience. And we've seen movies with aliens in them, obviously, but just the way it's presented is so unique and different and creative and just bizarre and twisted. And there's just a lot of beautiful elements to this movie in a dark sort of way. Scarlett Johansson's performance is really good, but there's also just a lot of interesting kind of thought-provoking stuff to it as well. And yeah, Under the Skin is pretty great stuff. Coming in at number 63, and this is my oldest film on the list. This is also another one of the greatest serial killer movies of all time, and that is M. This is the German film from 1931. And I'll just say the opening 8 minutes of this movie are worth the price of admission alone, as the opening 8 minutes almost kind of serve as its own little short film, if you will. Just incredible visual storytelling, just extremely effective. And this is about a serial killer played by Peter Lorre who hunts children. And yes, I know the movie's almost 100 years old, so you're not going to have the blood and guts and stuff, but man, it is still really effective, really creepy. And it's a movie that obviously helped pave the way for, other films that we've gotten throughout the years. And so it's a classic, it's an important film, and it's also really good and holds up really well. Coming in at number 62, we've got another found footage, and that is Creep. One of the absolute best, and also contains maybe the best performance in a found footage movie I've ever seen with Mark Duplass. I mean, man, he absolutely owns this role and just sells it in every single scene. And his character is so kind of eerie and unsettling. Man, it just makes such a great experience watching this movie. He's so good with this character, and the ending, man, is just very disturbing. And I just think one of the reasons why I like the found footage element is because, to me, it's just very effective. A lot of it just feels authentic and real. And this movie, it really kind of has that real authentic feeling, and it sells it about as well as just about any other found footage movie does. And so, yeah, you combine that with Mark Duplass, and it's a winning recipe right there. Next up at 61, it's another found footage, everybody, and that is Hell House LLC. I just recently did a ranking of this franchise on my channel. Be sure to check that out if you haven't, especially if you're a fan of the franchise or of found footage movies. But the original, the first one, is still my favorite. But I was really impressed with the recent one, LLC Origins. But the original one still holds that #1 spot. And man, the clowns, dude, I'm telling you, the clowns are just so creepy. There's just a handful of moments in this that it's just really effective. And I like the low budget approach here. I think the less is more approach just works. The whole experience, I think, is just pretty freaky and scary. And again, the clowns, dude, I'm not even afraid of clowns like in real life. I have no, fear of clowns whatsoever. But man, when I put on this movie, they get me. I don't know what else to say. So yeah, Hell House LLC, man. It's pretty good stuff. Coming in at number 57 is Nosferatu the Vampire, and this is I guess technically the remake from the old one from the 20s. This is the one that came out in 1979, directed by Werner Herzog, and this is the classic story of Dracula, and man, it's just really well done here. Klaus Kinski as the title character is haunting, man, and unforgettable. He's fantastic in it, and really just the production design, the cinematography, and just, the whole visual presentation of this thing really sticks out, and it's just very memorable. The atmosphere is fantastic. It just kind of has that, that gothic sort of atmosphere, just creepy and eerie, and also just a really well-told story with just a fantastic performance, again, by Klaus Kinski. And yeah, Nosferatu the Vampire is my number 57. Coming in at number 56 is Kill List. This was directed by Ben Wheatley, and this is a movie that I think is a borderline kind of a hidden gem, but man, it is phenomenal. This movie kind of starts off as this sort of crime thriller in a way. This ex-hitman gets tasked with doing one last job. And so it kind of starts off as this crime thriller and then gradually develops into a horror movie until you get to the very end. And it has one of the most messed up and disturbed endings I have ever seen. And just based on the ending alone is the main reason why it is in this list. But man, if you like horrific and disturbing endings, go check out Kill List. You'll never forget it. Coming in at number 55 is The Invitation. Oh my goodness. This is another movie that I feel like doesn't get talked about a whole lot, but it absolutely should because it is fantastic. This one's directed by Karen Kusama, who does a fantastic job with it. Stars Logan Marshall Green. He gets invited to this dinner party hosted by his ex-wife. Michelle Huisman's in it. John Carroll Lynch is in it, who delivers one of the most unsettling and disturbing just like monologues that I've ever seen. It has stuck with me ever since. I will never forget it. And I love the kind of almost it kind of has that like sort of bottle episode feeling, because it pretty much all takes place in one location just at this house, and it has a bit of this sort of stage play feeling to it as well, as you just got this cast of characters in one spot, and all of a sudden you start figuring out that some people may have some ulterior motives and ill intentions. And man, by the time you get to the end, whew, it is phenomenal. Just intense, horrifying, just an absolutely great thrill ride. And I highly recommend The Invitation. Like I said, this one I feel like doesn't quite get the love that it deserves because it's pretty great. Coming in at number 53 is going to be another film from Leigh Whannell, and that is The Invisible Man, starring Elizabeth Moss in a fantastic performance, one of the best of the last handful of years. And although I haven't seen the old original sort of monster, Universal monster movie, I love the modernized rendition and take that Whannell does with this. I think it's just extremely effective. I think the scene, the dinner scene, the scene at the restaurant with Elizabeth Moss is just fantastic. One of the best horror scenes of the last handful of years. I think it's awesome. And I also like, too, that it goes beyond just the surface level as a horror movie, as it's really about this woman who's been in this abusive relationship. And so just all the horror that comes with that as well. And again, Elizabeth Moss just crushes it. She gives just a fantastic performance. And so, yeah, Leigh Whannell, one of the best working in horror today, and Invisible Man is proof why. Coming in at number 53 is The Endless, and this is directed by Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. This is my favorite film of theirs, although I have to give a quick special shout out to Resolution as well. Really good movie that I would say just kind of barely missed my list here, but The Endless is fantastic. This movie's got all sorts of wild, crazy stuff going for it. It's about these two guys who escape this UFO death cult. As if that doesn't sound crazy enough, then this videotape shows up on their porch one day, and they end up right back to where they started. They go back to the camp where this cult is. And like I said, this thing's just got craziness going for it. There's like, time loops, there's alien stuff, there's cult stuff. It has, kind of this fantastical element to it. And just so many kind of wild, crazy ideas, very inventive and unique. And yeah, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, man, they're some of the best working in horror today. And I don't think they've quite gotten that sort of, I think they deserve kind of the big spotlight. They deserve like a huge, a big budget, big horror movie. These guys are very creative, and The Endless is reason why. All right, number 52. Number 52 is As Above, So Below. It's another found footage, but what can I say, man? Look, this is just a blast of a movie, and the setting alone makes it worth it, as you've got these, handful of people who are going down into the underground catacombs beneath the city of Paris. And it just has this claustrophobic feel to it. And it's so cool that they were actually able to film this on location. And so when it comes to the sort of real, authentic element, this is as real as it gets, because the catacombs actually exist and they filmed there. So it's just fantastic. I mean, that setting alone is, I mean, what more do you need? And like I said, it's got this claustrophobic element to it, but it also has a little bit of this kind of puzzle to it, to where there's these kind of little clues and cues that you can pick up on. It's a little bit of a story that has a connection to the Nine Circles of Hell and Dante and stuff like that, and so I really like it. It's an absolute blast, and it's one of the best found footage films that I've ever seen. Next up at 51, we have got The Exorcist Part 3. And this is a film that I watched for the very first time just a few months back, as I went through the entire Exorcist franchise and did a review and a ranking video. And this is a movie that I had heard about for a while as kind of one of those hidden gems. And I remember a handful of people had left comments on my videos saying, wait till you get to Exorcist 3, it's really great. And so it's a movie that kind of had some expectations that people were building up to it. And man, when I finally watched it, I was like, dude, you people aren't joking, because it is genuinely fantastic. This is another film that you could kind of throw on that best sort of serial killer horror movies of all time. Man, this is awesome. George C. Scott in this is fantastic. I love the story. It's just a really compelling story. I like that it kind of, it sort of has the demonic possession part of it a little bit lighter and is more focused on the murder mystery aspect, which I personally find more compelling. And so, huge fan of that there. And it got one of the best jump scares of all time. And then finally, Brad Dourif. That's all I need to say. If you know, you know. Brad Dourif. Wow.
He is inside with us. He will never get away. His pain won't end.
Next up at number 50 is One Cut of the Dead. This is the Japanese horror comedy. And man, this is such a good time. This is really sort of a movie within a movie type movie. And man, it's so well done. It's so fun. It's so just creative, amazing camera work. And this is about a film crew that is trying to make a movie of a low budget zombie movie. And they start getting attacked by real zombies while filming a movie. And I won't say much more about it than that, because there's just kind of, there's definitely a surprising element in just the way that it tells its story and in the presentation of it. But if you haven't seen One Cut of the Dead, I can't recommend it highly enough. It's awesome. Number 49 is Possession. This is the film from 1981 that stars Sam Neill and Isabelle Adjani. And all I can say is Isabelle Adjani gives one of the most just visceral and powerful and intense performances I've probably ever seen in any horror movie. This is such an experience of a film, man, and it's really kind of hard to put into words. This is a movie that, like, when you get done watching it, you just feel like you went to battle. Like, there's just so much craziness in this movie that it's really hard to put into words. It kind of has to be seen to be believed. Neill and Adjani play a married couple, but they are having some serious marital problems, to put it lightly, as Neill suspects that something is going on with her, and he is suspecting that maybe there is some type of possession. And oh my goodness, this movie goes into just some wild, crazy places, but it is one that is not to be missed. Definitely check it out. Next up at number 48 is another film starring Sam Neill, and that is Event Horizon. And this is just a great 90s sci-fi horror movie. This one also stars Lawrence Fishburne, and it tells the story of this rescue crew who is going to investigate this sudden reappearance of this spaceship that suddenly reappeared after having been missing for 7 years. They're trying to kind of put the mystery together and figure out what exactly happened to it and where did they go. And this thing gets into it's just great sci-fi horror, just some bizarre, wild, dark, crazy places that it goes to. The sci-fi horror here just works awesome. I love just the outer space location and everything. It just gives the whole thing just a great vibe and feel to it, and Event Horizon, it's fantastic. Coming in at number 44 is going to be Suspiria. This is the original one, directed by Dario Argento from 1977. Man, oh, I love this movie. It's so much fun. One of the most just visually gorgeous and beautiful horror movies ever made. Just the bright red and green and blue neon colors really just make this thing pop and stick in your brain. The musical score from Goblin is also extremely memorable. I mean, I can hear the theme song playing in my head right now. It's creepy and it just sticks with you. The kills here are also, man, so fantastic. The opening kill is like probably a top 10 horror kill of all time. The climax is just fantastic as well. And yeah, if by some crazy chance you haven't seen Suspiria, go check it out. It's fantastic. Next up at number 43 is going to be Paranormal Activity. And this is one of my most memorable and favorite theater-going experiences. I remember seeing it in theaters when it first came out. Paranormal Activity is really kind of my generation's Blair Witch Project, if you will. And yeah, this movie was all the rage, and I remember went and seen it with a couple of buddies and was just thoroughly enjoying it, having a great time. I remember looking over at my buddy next to me during some of the scary scenes and him just having his hat pulled down over his eyes, scrunched up like this, and I was just laughing because I was having a great time and he was scared out of his mind. But yeah, it's great stuff. It's, another found footage. I think it's still one of the best, and it's very stripped down, very low budget, very simple, but it's just great. I think it holds up really well. I like the simplicity of it, and it's just really effective. It's amazing what they were able to do with, almost no money. And here we are talking about it all these years later. Paranormal Activity, my number 43. Coming in at 42 is A Tale of Two Sisters, and this is from South Korea. Another great one. This one is a horror mystery film as well, and I really love, this one has just a nice slow burn atmosphere. It just is that slow burn, slow build up to a pretty great climax. And this one is a story about, wouldn't you know it, two sisters, and one of them is just returning home from a mental hospital as she is reunited with her other sister, and when she comes home, things just start getting weird. And I love, like I said, the slow build. I love the mystery element to it. The ending is fantastic. Got some good performances too, and just some genuinely unsettling scenes. Keeps you guessing all the way until the very end. Great film. Next up at number 41 is Halloween. This is the original from 1978, of course. It is, without question, the best film in the Halloween franchise. And last year, I actually reviewed the entire Halloween franchise on my channel. It was first-time watch for almost all of them, with the exception of this film. And I just have to say, after having gone through the entire franchise, my appreciation and admiration for the original just continued to skyrocket. And man, it's such a fantastic film. Obviously, the music is great, and it's got maybe the greatest horror slasher villain of all time in Michael Myers in it, but just Carpenter's direction is phenomenal. And the way he just squeezes every last drop of suspense out of the scenes, I love it. As I think the build-up to the kills themselves, the build-up is as good, if not better, than the actual kills themselves, just because of Carpenter's direction. And again, it's all just the suspense building, and he just does such a fantastic job with it. Love Halloween. It's a phenomenal movie. What else can I say about it? Next up at number 40 is Black Coat's Daughter. This is directed by Oz Perkins. And this is a film that I feel is a bit of in a hidden gem type category. Definitely underappreciated, not talked about nearly as much as I think it should be. This is an A24 film. And this is another one that just has fantastic atmosphere and just a great slow burn. I'm a huge fan of just that slow build, slow burn suspense throughout most of the movie until you kind of get to the end and, you know, everything sort of comes together or the kettle sort of boils over, right? And this is just a fantastic film in that regards. There's a mysterious element to it as well, as you're kind of putting a couple different storylines together and trying to figure out how they work and connect together. And it's just creepy and eerie, and takes place, it's got a really small minimal cast. Couple girls have to stay at their boarding school over this like winter holiday over a weekend, and so just a nice kind of creepy eerie location with this empty schoolhouse, and it's just fantastic. Great atmosphere, nice little mystery to it as well. Black Coat's Daughter is fantastic. Number 39 is Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. Oh man, it's amazing how well this film holds up. This came out in 1963, and so what does that put it at? Over 60 years old now, and it still holds up tremendously well. And first of all, Hitchcock has got to be commended because he actually uses the majority real birds in this movie, which is just incredible and adds so much to the effectiveness and the authenticity. And this film is just a great example of the master at work, where he takes something that shouldn't really be all that scary and makes it absolutely terrifying and extremely effective. And it ends with like kind of one of the great unanswered questions in horror movie history, and that's, you know, why did the birds attack? And we just kind of never find out. But I think it's a perfect way to end the movie. Good performances too, and yeah, it's a classic, and I love it. Holds up really, really well. Coming in at number 38 is Annihilation. This is directed by Alex Garland, and this is another sci-fi horror type movie that I thought was just fantastic. This is one that I think rewards multiple viewings. I like movies that you kind of really have to zero in and focus on the little things and the details, and there's an element of this movie that's kind of a bit of a puzzle piece as you're kind of watching for little clues, and there's parts of this that are kind of up to interpretation. It gets into some sort of just kind of almost fantastical and just kind of bizarre territory. I think the creature, all I can call it is like the skeleton bear, I guess, is genuinely terrifying. A fantastic monster that really only shows up for one scene but is extremely memorable. And I just find the film overall to be really ambitious, as you have this group of women scientists who go into this zone where the laws of science and physics have been twisted and distorted. And so things just get really bizarre, but it's very ambitious and creative, and it's just a great film. Next up at number 37 is Haunt. And this is a film that the first time I watched it, I did not really expect all that much, and I was pleasantly surprised. And I think this is a great example of a film that is not really by any means reinventing the wheel, as this is just a handful of friends who go out on Halloween night to a haunted house, and things get horrifying, obviously. And so we have seen movies like this, you know, many, many times. But this is just, I think, a prime example of making something that we've seen before, but making like the best possible version of that thing. And I thoroughly enjoy this movie. I think the villains in this movie are genuinely disturbing and creepy, man. And I just like that the whole film has this sort of escape room type feel to it, as they're kind of trying to avoid booby traps and figure out how to get out of the haunted house. And it's just kind of this, you know, it's a haunted house maze, and they're trying to escape. And I love the whole element to where, you know, for the first little part, they obviously believe it's all an act, right? Until they realize that, you know, people are really getting murdered. And so, again, it just takes a very kind of simple concept that we've seen a million times, but does it just so well. Next up at number 33 is Suspiria. This is the, I guess you could call it remake or reimagining. This film should be like the prototype for how remakes are to be done, as it's just amazing. Luca Guadagnino's vision for this just has a completely different visual style, and I like what he does to just expand on the story. This one's like an hour longer than the original. Really good performances from everybody, and this one has just a handful of just really awesome, horrific sequences. The particular scene with Dakota Johnson where she's kind of doing her first dance to show the teachers what she's capable of, and then it cross cuts between that and then the other girl as her body gets all twisted and contorted and everything. Just a fantastic scene. And the ending, man, is pure insanity, and it's hard to put into words. You kind of just have to watch it. You will never forget it, man. Suspiria 2018, great stuff. Coming in at number 32, this may be a bit of an unconventional choice, but hear me out here. Number 32 is The Terminator. Yes, Arnold Schwarzenegger from 1984. Look, man, I consider this a slasher film, and I don't think that's an outrageous opinion, but it's my list. I'm going to make it the way that I want to. But yeah, it's The Terminator. I mean, what can you say? It's genuinely great. I love the... It's a sci-fi, sort of futuristic slasher movie, and it's awesome. It's also, an action movie and thriller and stuff like that too, but it's great. The practical effects, I think, hold up quite well, and Arnold he crushes the role. One of the most, iconic characters of all time. What else can I say? The Terminator, man, it's a blast. Next up at number 31 is going to be Saint Maud. This is a film I just recently reviewed on my channel a few weeks ago. So check out that review if you want some more in-depth thoughts. But man, I love this movie. It's so well done. Rose Glass, just an incredible directorial debut. Morfydd Clark's performance in this is just really, really solid. Has a fantastic ending. And it's such a shocking portrait of a woman who is ultimately unwell and is suffering from all sorts of things, but a lot of it has to do with just her isolation and loneliness, and just how that can manifest itself in very horrific and unhealthy ways. But just a thought-provoking film, got interesting themes and ideas going through it, and it's awesome. All right, next up at number 30 is going to be, this is a newer one, Terrifier 2. Yeah, I know. Maybe it's suffering from a little recency bias because it just came out, but man, I love this movie. It's just fantastic. Yes, I know it's probably way too long, but this is horror movie gluttony. There's no other way to say it. It is the most, over-the-top, excessive, self-indulgent, slasher movie, but it's just an absolute riot. Art the Clown is quickly becoming, one of the most iconic horror villains, at least, within the last decade or so, for sure. I think Lauren Lavera in this is fantastic. I love what Damien Leone did in just kind of opening up the world and kind of giving this movie a little bit of lore and just kind of the whole backstory, and just very curious to see what he does with the follow-up with part 3, obviously. But yeah, I love Lauren Lavera's performance, and her character is really good. And I think that the bedroom kill scene in this movie, it might be the most just brutal, gory, and insane kill I've ever seen in any horror movie. It's wild, man. Terrifier 2. Yeah, it's my number 30. Next up at number 29, this is another recent one, but man, I loved it so much, and that is Resurrection. Rebecca Hall here gives one of the very best acting performances I have seen in the last while. And I said in my original review for this movie that anytime I thought about best horror movie performances, at least in the last decade or so, Toni Collette from Hereditary was the first one that came to mind. And now Rebecca Hall sits right there with her. She is unbelievable in this movie. And this is a psychological horror thriller. And this movie just has... I love that it presents itself in a very sort of ambiguous way, to where You're not entirely sure how to interpret things. You're not entirely sure how to understand things. It rewards multiple viewings. The ending is just wild, to put it simply. And it just the overall tone and vibe of the movie, man, I absolutely loved it. It's a fantastic psychological horror movie that is must watch. Coming in at number 28, we've got another Arnold movie, ladies and gentlemen, and that is Predator. Yes. Man, this is just, you know, if male testosterone could be made into a movie, like, I mean, this is it, right? I mean, if you haven't seen Predator, man, what are you doing? Just stop this video right now and go watch it. It's fantastic. One of the great horror monsters ever. And I mean, it's just so much fun. It's just an absolute blast, man. This is the cream of the crop, the absolute peak of 80s action horror. It doesn't get any better than this. This is a movie that I could just endlessly rewatch and never get tired of it. Predator is an absolute blast. Next up at number 27 is Pi. This is Darren Aronofsky's debut film from 1998. And this movie is a complete and total mind trip. This one tells a story of this mathematician who is trying to like pinpoint this number that he believes is going to unlock secrets to the universe. And so this one, in addition to a horror element, has, you know, a mystery, a sci-fi. It's very sort of paranoid, psychological, conspiracy type stuff. And just that whole vibe is awesome. It's trippy, it's bizarre, and I love it. That's why it's my number 27. Coming in at number 26. Now, if you remember, all the way back at number 99, which was The Hunt, I said that film was the light version of a movie that was going to appear much later on that list. Well, here it is. Number 26 is Battle Royale. And let me tell you, this movie is no joke. It pulls no punches. As this movie tells a story about these middle school and high school kids who get kidnapped out of their school and taken to an isolated location where they are made and forced to kill each other off until there is only one person remaining. And dude, it is as extreme and wild as that sounds. This movie is a experience unlike I've really ever experienced before. It's shocking, it's violent, it's brutal. It's a crazy movie. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Next up at number 25 from David Lynch, and that is Inland Empire. And I've probably made this statement a couple times throughout this video so far, but this is absolutely the most bizarre movie I've ever seen. Inland Empire is David Lynch just completely unhinged. As I remember reading about some of the behind-the-scenes stuff where he called up Laura Dern one day and was like, hey, do you want to just help me experiment? And that was basically it. There was like no script. It's David Lynch completely unglued, making something that you will never forget. And I don't even really know how to give you a plot synopsis for this movie. You just kind of have to watch it. And it is such a singularly unique experience that could only possibly come from the mind of David Lynch. You owe it to yourself to at least watch it once, and maybe you'll be like myself and absolutely love it. It's unbelievable. It is such a crazy and wild experience, and it's got a handful of scenes that are genuinely unsettling and terrifying. But man, it's so effective. Just the feeling and the atmosphere of the whole experience is, again, something only David Lynch can do. Inland Empire, it is wild. Coming in at number 24 is Old Boy. This is the classic from South Korea. Let me tell you, this movie, man, is unforgettable. Min-Sik Choi gives just a fantastic performance. Park Chan-wook, I still think this is his best film. And the setup here is just fantastic, as Min-Sik Choi one day just gets kidnapped and imprisoned for 15 years. and then one day just randomly released without explanation, and he's told he has 5 days to find his captors. As if that isn't intriguing enough, the way that this movie plays out and unfolds is unforgettable and totally unpredictable. It goes into some deep, dark places, has one of the greatest fight scenes of all time with the hallway sequence where he's just fighting dudes off with a hammer. Oh, I love that scene. It's so awesome. And yeah, if by some chance you haven't seen Oldboy, this is another one, man. It's like, stop what you're doing immediately, put it on, you'll never be the same. Coming in at number 20 is I'm Thinking of Ending Things. This is Charlie Kaufman's latest film, and man, I absolutely love this thing. This is a movie that I actually read the book before watching it, and it didn't sour the experience 1 ounce. I think Kaufman just nails the vibe and the feeling of the book so well. It has just another one of those films where the presentation is very mysterious and kind of enigmatic, to where you're not entirely sure what to make of things. You're not entirely sure how to interpret things. And so there's just this overall feeling of eeriness and you know, unsettlement. And performances here are really good. And I just love the way that Kaufman brought the book to life. It's so creative, and there's so much detail to it and little clues and things to pick up on. And I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. Coming in at number 19, and this is a film that may not technically be considered a horror film, but it is absolutely horrifying to me. It is still to this day, I'm going to just call it definitively the most disturbing film I've ever seen. And that is Requiem for a Dream. This is another film by Darren Aronofsky. Man, this guy just has a way with making films that stick with you. Look, this is a movie about a handful of characters' just descent into heroin addiction. And oh my goodness, this thing goes into some just brutal, bleak, horrifying, depressing places. But the way Aronofsky shoots it and the editing here, man, it's so memorable and so effective. The musical score is phenomenal, like one of the best I've ever heard. The performances, Ellen Burstyn gives one of the greatest acting performances I've ever seen, period. She's unbelievable in this movie. Like, you truly have to see it to believe it. It's unreal how amazing she is in this film. And it is powerful, man. If there's any movie that I think could legitimately scare people away from getting into drugs, this is the one, man. It is powerful. It is captivating. It is brutal. It is a punch to the face. You got to watch it, though. Requiem for a Dream is my number 19. Coming in at number 18 is going to be The Descent. Yes, from Neil Marshall. Probably like the epitome of claustrophobic horror. You got a handful of these girls. They go spelunking down into this cave. They get trapped down there, and there's something down there with them. And this movie is just a blast. And I love that there's a little bit more of an emotional element to it. There's a psychological element to it, as well as the film does a good job with the characters. It's not just purely a sort of creature feature. There's some more kind of psychological stuff at play. Like I said, the claustrophobic feels that it gives you are extremely effective. The creatures are awesome, and this movie it's so much fun to watch, and I absolutely love it, obviously, and that's why it's on my list at number 18. Next up at number 17 is Evil Dead 2. Yes, my favorite one of the franchise, and this is another film. It's a horror comedy. It's kind of one of the rare ones that works for me. And look, what can I say about this movie that hasn't been said? This is like just some of the most pure fun that you can possibly have with any horror movie. And the practical effects are phenomenal. The design and just the looks of the demons are phenomenal. The camera work has so much just energy to it. And I mean, Bruce Campbell. I mean, dude, it's Ash. That's all I need to say, right? I mean, when he sticks the frickin' chainsaw on his hand, I mean, how do you not just sit there with a big old smile on your face and just have like the most fun time you've ever had with a horror movie ever? It's awesome. I absolutely love it. Coming in at number 16 is Evolution. This is the French film that came out in 2015 that hardly ever gets talked about. Not a lot of people have even heard of this one, let alone seen it, but I think it is masterful. I love this film. This is like a very sort of minimalist horror movie, but I think it's just so effective. I love the overall atmosphere. This one is about the story of this young boy. He's probably 8 to 10 years old or so, and he lives in this seaside town. It's this small little town where the only residents are women and young boys, and he starts seeing some things that seem a little off, and at random points in time, the young boys are taken to the local hospital there in the town, and he doesn't really know why. And so there's something eerie going on in this little town, and what exactly it is, well, you obviously got to watch the movie. This is a gorgeous film just in terms of the scenery, and just looking at the movie, it's just beautiful. I love the very minimalist type approach, very kind of stripped down sets, very just simple, basic. Not a lot of dialogue, a lot of just visual storytelling, and you kind of really have to, pay attention and follow things, and nothing is really spelled out for you. You really kind of got to make inferences and make connections. So there's a very mysterious element to it, and so the visual presentation, the production design is awesome, and I love how it tells the story, just that mysterious element to it. And man, I love this movie. And I know, like I said, a lot of people never even heard of it, let alone seen it, but go check it out. Coming in at number 15 is Cure. This is the second film from Japanese director Kiyoshi Kurosawa. And I have a full in-depth review of this movie on my channel that I think is, like 25 minutes long or something like that. This movie is fantastic. This is, in addition to being a horror, it's also this sort of crime, police procedural, mystery, thriller as well. This is a movie that deals with some pretty dark themes, as this police detective is going around investigating these murders where all the victims have this X symbol on them somewhere, but all the killers are different people. And so what is the connection there? Why are all the MOs of the killers the exact same, and why are they leaving this same symbol on all the victims? And this movie goes into some dark places. I love the way it's filmed. It's filmed in kind of a very simple way, to where there's kind of just like a lot of wide shots where you almost feel like this kind of innocent bystander who happens to be, this sort of observer to, watching the events of this film unfold. And so a lot of it is presented in just a very sort of simple, naturalistic way, but it's extremely effective. And I'll just say the villain in this movie is just very haunting. There's a lot of just subtext, thought-provoking stuff, and just the whole atmosphere. It's just very creepy and unsettling. And man, I just love this film. It's fantastic. Coming in at number 14 is Ghost Stories. This is another movie that I think is a borderline hidden gem that is underappreciated, and way more people need to talk about it. I think Ghost Stories is fantastic. I have a full review for this movie on my channel as well. Check it out if you want some more in-depth thoughts. But this is a bit of a horror anthology type movie, as it tells kind of three mini stories within one larger story. So they're not separate. They all relate and connect to the overall larger story. But man, it's extremely well done. I called this film in my original review for it, this is like existential horror, where like you're questioning everything you think you know and everything you believe in, and it's just extremely effective. And again, this is another movie that I think rewards multiple viewings. There's a lot of just ideas and subtext to it that I think you can just really kind of get out and it gets discussion going and gets your mind moving. And yeah, it's incredibly effective. I absolutely love it. And like I said, it's underappreciated. Man, I wish more people would be talking about this movie because it is awesome. Next up at number 13 is Mandy. And I also have a full review for this movie. I absolutely love it. One of the most just visually amazing and beautiful looking horror movies of all time. It just really stands out. Nicolas Cage in here is fantastic. And just the images themselves just sear themselves into your brain. And it's just, they're so distinct and memorable that, like, I mean, I can just recall to memory, like, so many individual shots and sequences in this movie that just, man, they just have that lasting power. The visual presentation here is awesome. The score is awesome. And the second half of this movie, the first half is more of a slower buildup. The second half of this movie is like the most metal horror movie like you've ever seen. It's so fantastic. I mean, look no further than the axe that freaking Nicolas Cage uses to fight this guy with. Man, it's just so fantastic. Man, I love this movie so much. Coming in at number 12 is the certified absolute classic, and that is Alien. And there's not much I can say about this that hasn't been said. It's probably the greatest creature and most memorable horror creature like ever put to film. And I love this movie. The chestbuster scene is like one of the greatest horror scenes of all time. The creature's fantastic. Sigourney Weaver is great. And I just thoroughly enjoy. I mean, what else is there to say? I love this film. The practical effects are, man, they're just so great. They're awesome. They hold up so well. This is another one of those movies that you can just endlessly rewatch and it never gets old. Coming in at number 11 from Robert Eggers, and that is The Witch. Anya Taylor-Joy in this is phenomenal. And I'll just say, as of right now anyway, this is my most favorite religious horror movie of all time. I love it. I love just the way Eggers tells the story. I love the sort of the paranoia, the self-doubt, the questioning, and the little secrets and divisions that slowly emerge out of this family to create what ends up happening. And man, the performance he's able to get out of the younger brother in this movie, I can't think of the name off the top, when he's like freaking out later on in the movie, oh my gosh, it's so good. The scene where Anya Taylor-Joy is finally confronted with the devil is, oh, man, it's hard to put into words, right? It's just like all these movies I just love so much, and it's like just such this rewarding, amazing emotional experience. It's hard to put those experiences into words, but I love this film. The ending is also fantastic as well. That's why it's my number 11. All right, everybody. You've made it to the top 10. Here we go. And I just have to say, you know, it's almost impossible to make ranking videos, right? Because you kind of just have to go with how you feel on any given day and just go for it. And a lot of these, at least in the top 25 or so, could be somewhat interchangeable. And same thing goes with these top 10. I mean, on any given day, any one of them could probably be vying for that number 1 spot. But as of today, how I feel right now in this moment, this is where we're at. So here we go. Coming in at number 10 is going to be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. And man, this is just one of the most exciting and thrilling horror movie experiences of all time. As what this movie does, this is 80 minutes long. The first 40 minutes are, you know, fairly mellow and tame, nothing too crazy. But man, as soon as Leatherface shows up in one of my all-time favorite horror movie scenes ever, this movie just immediately cranks the dials to 11. And for the last 40 minutes of it, it is nonstop white-knuckle insanity. And it is just, oh, it's such a fun time. This movie, it's just amazing how long it is able to sustain that level of just craziness for 40 minutes. It's like literally nonstop. It's such a fun ride. You know, it's got one of the all-time great horror movie villains in it. And this is a movie too that has such a distinct like just look and feel to it that I've never really experienced and felt in any other horror movie, to where it just has this dirty, grimy, grungy look to it, to where it's like you almost feel like you shouldn't be watching it. It just feels dirty. But obviously that adds to the overall, effectiveness of it. And yeah, Texas Chainsaw Man, love it. Coming in at number 9 is Psycho. And I know this is kind of genuinely considered, it's a classic, of course, and one of the most important movies of all time. But it's a movie that not only do I like respect and appreciate, but I just love it. I think Anthony Perkins in this is fantastic, and I love what Hitchcock does here. The fact that he makes such a crazy decision as to kill off like his leading lady in the first, half of the movie kind of thing. I mean, what can I say about the shower sequence? It still holds up fantastically well today. This movie came out in 1960. It's over 60 years old, and it just still holds up. I love the mystery element to it. Again, Anthony Perkins, man, he's so fantastic in this. He's just so good. And it's genuinely disturbing and unsettling still to this day. And yeah, it's a classic, and I love it. Coming in at number 8 is A Nightmare on Elm Street from Wes Craven, 1984. I've reviewed this entire franchise on my channel, and this is my favorite one in the franchise. And, I feel like this is another one. What else can I say? All of the creative decisions that were made in this movie were the right ones. And not only do you have a great slasher, but I love just the idea that Craven had to take a slasher and enter it into the dream world. It's one of the greatest ideas that has ever been come up with in horror movie history, in my opinion. Obviously you've got the great, Freddy Krueger as the villain, which is just adds so much. And I mean, that alone is great, but I just love that he's able to put it in the dream world. And so then he's able to take the creativity with this thing and just go completely, off the walls. And I'll never forget watching for the first time, the scene where Tina gets killed and she's up on the ceiling rolling around. And I just like jaw dropped. I was like, dude, this movie is freaking insane. And yeah, it is. I love it. It's got one of the best final girls of all time too. And yeah, I love it. What else can I say? I love it. Coming in at number 7 is going to be Eraserhead. Yes, another one from David Lynch. This is his directorial debut. I did a bit of a review, more of like a video essay type of a video for this movie. And yeah, man, Eraserhead is another one. I mean, it's David Lynch, so if you know David Lynch, but man, he is just in a completely different realm of reality when it comes to his movies, to where, I mean, you've genuinely never seen anything like it before. And Eraserhead is another example of, it's such a singularly unique experience, and the visual presentation is phenomenal. And I just like I just like how it's presented, and it's I like the abstractness of it. I like the kind of, the symbolism of it, and the sound design and the cinematography and everything, the production design too. It just all culminates to create such a trippy, bizarre, creepy experience. The the baby is horrifying. And yeah, there's so many different feelings and emotions that you go through when watching this movie, and I thoroughly enjoy every single one of them. Eraserhead, I love it. All right, next up at number 6, we've got Hereditary from Ari Aster. As I mentioned just a handful of minutes ago, Toni Collette's performance, it's one of the best horror movie performances I've ever seen. She is just unbelievable to watch in this movie. This movie, man, it's so well executed. The whole sequence with Charlie in the car ride and what happens there with the phone pole is just one of the most disturbing and unsettling scenes. But the way that Aster, I've actually done a video of this scene on my channel as well. It's one of my favorite horror movie scenes of all time. But the way he like edits and puts that scene together is, man, I don't think you could possibly have pulled that off any more effectively than what he did. It's so well done, right? And then just like, you know, holding, kind of prolonging it to where you see the reaction of Alex Wolff, then you see the agony of Toni Collette, and then he cuts back to the head, and it's like, oh my gosh, dude, it's so well done. The entire film, it's awesome. The ending, man, Toni Collette in the end, gosh, they're just individual shots that are just, they are living in my head rent free, and they're still just creeping me out. It's fantastic. So I feel like I could go on and on about this movie forever, but let's go to the next one. Coming in at number 5 is The Lighthouse, another film from Robert Eggers. And I've done a video on this movie as well, getting into a review and also kind of my interpretation and, you know, what I think the whole thing is all about. And yeah, check that out if you want more in-depth thoughts. But this is another movie that just has a lot of layers. There's a lot of kind of ways you can interpret it. Again, I like kind of how sort of artistic and you know, just bizarre it is too. And I like kind of all the symbolism there. The performances are amazing. The visuals and the cinematography is amazing. And just, again, it's another one of those movies where like the individual images are just so, they just sear themselves into your brain. They're just so memorable. And yeah, go check out my review for more thoughts, but I love this movie. Next up at number 4 is The Thing. And yeah, it's another one. It's an all-time classic. What can I say about it? The practical effects are the greatest practical effects that have ever been done. This is probably like a desert island movie, right? Like you never get tired of it. It's so good, man. The isolation, the paranoia are, man, it just contributes just such an incredible experience. The overall atmosphere of it is fantastic. I've done a full review on this movie as well, so check it out. But yeah, man, I love this movie. It's endlessly rewatchable. Kurt Russell's great. And it got another, like, one of the greatest jump scares of all time with the blood test scene. It's The Thing. What else can I say? Next up at number 3 is Scream. Yes, from Wes Craven, 1996. This has, like, one of my most favorite horror movie characters of all time in the character of Randy. And this is, I'll just officially say, my favorite horror comedy ever. I absolutely love it. And the main reason why this is so funny is because of Matthew Lillard. I can't even say his name without laughing. Oh my gosh. And it's still shocking to me that it's as funny as it is given Lillard's performance, because he's such a complete goofball. Like, he's so corny and ridiculous and over the top that you would think it kind of kills the thrills and the tension of the movie, but it doesn't. He is genuinely hilarious and yet at the same time also kind of terrifying. Like, I love how inventive it is and, you know, what it does with all the slasher movie rules. It's just great. The cast of characters are phenomenal. This thing, the writing of this is awesome. The opening scene is, you know, one of the best in horror movie history. It's another one, man. It's endlessly rewatchable and I love it. Next up at number 2 is Jaws. Yes. I love Jaws. I mean, I kind of feel like I'm repeating myself at this point because, like, all these movies, they're endlessly rewatchable. I never get tired of them. It's like I enjoy them more and more each and every time I watch them. Spielberg directs the heck out of this thing, and what makes it so effective too is what he does with the characters, because each of the 3 main characters are so well written and established. The character work here is just, it's fantastic. And Robert Shaw gives, like, maybe the greatest monologue about the USS Indianapolis, like the greatest monologue maybe in movie history. I love that scene. And I love what Spielberg does and how he, you know, restrains from showing the shark until, you know, he is able to squeeze every last ounce of kind of mystery and suspense out of it until he can't do it anymore. And then finally you reveal the shark. And yeah, it's awesome. It's just one of those movies, man, that it's just kind of magic. It's like everything just works so well, and it's fully entertaining. It's still absolutely horrifying. And, you know, there's no way you could ever do a shark movie any better than this. And especially nowadays, because they would just make the shark with CG and it just looks like crap. Whereas, even though this is a fake mechanically built shark, it makes it scary, man. You watch this movie still today and it's still like, dude, that's a real freaking shark in there and it's coming to eat you. The scene at the end with Robert Shaw where he's getting eaten, and spoiler alert, but I mean, come on, the movie's like, you know, 50 something years old, but yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. I could watch it forever. It's my number 2. All right, here we go, everybody. My number 1 all-time favorite horror movie has actually been staring at you this entire video.
Here's Johnny.
There it is. The Shining. Stanley Kubrick. Maybe my favorite director, certainly right up there, but again, everything I've just said about these last, 10 movies, I could apply to this. I love it. It's got a fantastic performance by Jack Nicholson. Stanley Kubrick directs the heck out of it. The camera work is phenomenal. So many iconic shots, so many iconic scenes. It's endlessly rewatchable. There's always something new to appreciate about it. The atmosphere is like just flawlessly executed. And it's creepy, it's unsettling, it's just this slow descent into madness. And the ending, the final shot is just like, it's just one of the greatest final shots ever. And it just it just kind of blows your mind, right? Because then it's like, oh, I need to go back and rewatch this thing because maybe there's something more going on here than what meets the eye. And so I just like the sort of the different kind of ways you can interpret it and stuff like that. It's fantastic. I mean, what else is there to say? It's The Shining. It's Stanley Kubrick, Jack Nicholson. It doesn't really get any better than this, everybody. So that's why, for today anyways, it's my number 1 favorite horror movie of all time. So congratulations if you have made it this far. You deserve a prize. But yeah, seriously, thank you so much for watching. Hit me up down below. Let me know what you think of my list. Would love to hear some of your favorite horror movies as well. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, if you got something out of it, please consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it. That's all I got for you, everybody. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time on The Haunted Beard.